I got to my filming spot and it is way too windy. Okay, this spot's a little bit better, but there's still a little bit of wind. So I'm making this video today because this absolute legend asked me what my first solo was like in an airplane. The first time flying an airplane by yourself, by myself. So I got my license when I was 17 years old, and that was really cool. I was only able to do it because I got a $10,000 scholarship in order to help me learn to fly, and my parents loaned me some money in order to finish my license because I ran out of money. I did my flight training over the summer of my junior year. And over that summer, and a lot of summers here in California, it was fire season, okay? Really hot, lots of smoke, lots of firefighting airplanes going around, especially where I'm at in California. I believe I soloed around like 14 or 15 hours of flight training, meaning I had 15 hours of dual instruction, meaning I was flying with an instructor. Solo hours is when you're flying by yourself without an instructor. So I think I soloed around 14 and a half hours or something like that. And I was flying along with my instructor, who is a mentor of mine. I've known him for years, and we're just doing touch and goes. We're just flying around the pattern, doing some practice landings, and finally, I had an idea that I might be soloing that day. I didn't think it was gonna be that day. I thought it was gonna be the next time, but I had an idea that it was coming up close. And knowing the type of person that my instructor was, Brad, what an amazing guy. I had a feeling I wouldn't really know when I was gonna go. He's just gonna do it. And I wore my favorite shirt that day. That has context for later. I'll get to that. Look, there's a bug on my gimbal. Hey, little fella, how are you doing? Keep him as a pet for the rest of the vlog now. He's gonna come along with us. What should we name him? Gerald? I feel like Gerald is a very bug name. Gerald has flown away, or jumped. Okay, I need to check my logbook to make sure about the 14 hours thing. Also, it's really bright outside, and I usually keep sunglasses in my car. They're not in there. I totally lied. I am apparently a really bad pilot. See that right there? There. That was my first solo. And the numbers of hours it was that number plus that number. So I was at like 20 hours. Can you believe that? I was at 20 hours. So the story goes like this. Right, we're just flying around the pattern, doing some touch and go practice landings. They're all doing great. Nothing really that I can remember about them. They probably weren't amazing, but they weren't, like life-threatening. So, no news is good news, I guess, in that case. But we're taxiing back on the taxiway to go do another takeoff. Landed. He said, hey, let's do a full stop on this one. Let's taxi around. Because normally when you do a touch and go, usually touch tires, slow down a little bit, but then you just kick the throttle in and take off again so that you don't have to stop, get off the runway, taxi all the way back over the runway, and then take off again. But this time he wanted to do just that. So as we're taxiing down the taxiway, this guy goes, all right, kid, kicks open the door and goes, I'll see you later. And I was like, what? I mean, I knew that this solo was coming. I had a feeling that I was gonna be soloing in the next couple of flights. I didn't necessarily know it was gonna be that day, right? But he felt that I was ready, so he kicks open the door in the middle of the taxiway, and he goes, all right, kid, stop here, and I'm gonna get out and walk back to the terminal. I'm gonna listen to you on the radio. Just go do some practice landings. And I was like, shiver me timbers, okay. He starts walking back. Actually, I think one of the guys on the golf cart picked him up. So he goes back. So I continue on trucking. I taxi down the taxiway. Taxi down the taxi and do some touch and go landings. Now, the landings, they're probably fine. I don't really remember them that well. So again, no news is good news, probably. They probably weren't too bad or too good on either side. Mediocre at best. I land, and that was that. I wore my favorite shirt that day, and that's a detriment as a pilot on your first solo. The reason that's a detriment is because there's this old, not adage, tradition. That's it, tradition. There's this old tradition when you're flying that when you first solo, your instructor cuts the back of your shirt out. Yeah, I didn't know that until it happened. It's a terrible video, but maybe I'll throw it up. It's like 480p or something. But after I get done, I taxi the airplane over to the fuel pit. I get out, hey, congratulations. There's another gentleman there, another one of my mentors, super awesome guy, and he's out filming me. And I'm like, oh no. When somebody's filming you and you didn't know they were gonna film you, something's about to go down. And so I get out the airplane, and before I could start gassing it up, Brad whips out some scissors, and he goes, all right, kid, hands on the back of the airplane. He starts cutting the back of my shirt out. Well, the tradition is, when the first generation of pilots were learning how to fly, almost all of the airplanes were tandem seating, meaning that there's one seat in the front and one seat in the back. It's not side by side like a lot of airplanes nowadays. It's one in the front, one in the back. That's how my Aranca Champ is. The instructor usually sat in the back, and the solo or the student usually sat in the front. And a lot of times, it's really hard to hear on a lot of these airplanes. And in biplanes especially, where you have open cockpit, the radio is really hard to use, or even back in the day when they didn't have radios, the way that you would get the teacher would get the attention of the student is to tug on the back of their shirt, because they are sitting in front of them. They would tug on the back of their shirt, and a lot of biplanes and things like that, there's a little mirror that you can use to see the other person. So from the back seat, you can look in the mirror and see the front seat person, and from the front seat, you can look in the mirror and see the back seat person. So they usually tug on their thing, tug on their shirt, and then, you know, make some hand signals or say whatever they got to say in the mirror, visually. So the tradition is that when they first solo the airplane, they don't need their instructor anymore to tug on the back of their shirt, so they cut the back of their shirt out as a symbolism of your first solo flight or getting your wings. Now, there's a ton of different aviation traditions, like getting your wings in the Air Force and the Navy and Top Gun and all sorts of things like that. But that's just the general one that originated back when flying was pretty new. So he cut my favorite shirt. Now, okay, I'm not super heartbroken because it's just a plain blue t-shirt, but at the time it sucked. And my shirt is still hanging in the flight school that I originally flew in. I have the other half of it because he cut out a lot. What's funny is that I don't know if he says it in the video, but I was like drenched in sweat. It was like 100 degrees out when I was flying that day. Like I said, the whole Cal Fire summertime thing. Yeah, it was hot, it was drenched, and he cuts it off and goes, ugh, because it's literally drenched in sweat. More interesting is my third solo flight. On my third solo flight, I know I was talking about the first, but we're gonna talk about the third now. On my third solo flight, there was a fire going on, and we have an air attack fire base at our airport. So they had 10 airplanes, 10. I'm talking S2s, air attack, like King Airs and Broncos. I think the C-130 was out there for that one. I don't remember, but there were 10 firefighting airplanes revolving around the pattern about every 2 minutes or every 30 seconds apart, because they had airplanes that would land and fill up while the other ones are dropping retardant on the fire, and then they'd fly back. And since it wasn't that far away, it was only like 2 minutes in between each airplane. And so I'm up there in the pattern, a little Cessna 172 on the radio, trying to do touch and goes. It's windy. It's like blowing 13 knots, partial crosswind. There's 10 airplanes, and there's 10 Cal Fire airplanes plus other regular traffic in the airplane. And mind again, this is not a towered airport, so the tower isn't telling you where to go. You have to tell you where to go in accordance with how everybody else is talking. After about 4 times of me having to either go around or extend my landings because I'm letting these guys through, because these guys are on the clock, right? They got to get out to a fire. So I'm being a little bit selfless and, you know, letting them in front of me, either to land or take off or whatever. After about 30 minutes of this, and I only got 1 landing done in like that 30 minutes, my instructor comes over the radio and goes, Aiden, just land, we'll do this tomorrow. And I did great. He complimented me on my radio traffic skills, and he said I did everything good, but honestly, it was an experience. For my third solo flight, to have like 15 airplanes in the pattern at a non-towered airport especially, it was a little bit stressful. Again, like 103 degrees outside, it was hazy from the smoke, and yeah, it was an experience. Not to discourage you out of getting your license. If you're watching this video thinking about getting your private pilot license, you should. It's expensive, but you should. I think story time's over.